Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new IDontWorkHereLady stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The next one is titled, I'm not a pharmacist. So I went to urgent care this morning and found out I had a UTI. Because of my allergies and my pregnancy, they had a hard time finding an antibiotic that was safe for me to take. The joys of being me. Finally found one that won't cause a reaction or hurt baby, so they sent an RX to my pharmacy and I went to pick it up. The pharmacy has been short-staffed because of insert global reason here. As such, there was one lady trying to take calls and run orders and work the drive-through thing by herself. It's cool, I'm not in a rush. She's communicating to everyone, on the phone, in person and in drive-through, that she's short-staffed and will be with them soon as she can. Everyone understands, except the lady in the drive-through. Yeah, it's a bit of a wait, but it's literally one person trying to do everything. Lady in drive-through starts laying on her horn continuously, screaming at the pharmacist just trying to do her job. Now from where the lady is positioned in her car, I can see how she wouldn't be able to see where the plastic partition ended and the waiting area began. I mean, it's see-through plastic, so she legit might not have seen it and thought she was still looking at the register side of the pharmacy. And for some reason she decided that I was another pharmacist. To be clear, the pharmacists all wear white lab coats and professional attire underneath. I was wearing a red Mickey, Minnie Mouse t-shirt and had my hair up in the messiest of messy buns. Lady started screaming through the drive-through glass and pointing at me to get her meds. Again, BC of the setup, I understand maybe she couldn't see the counter, but one look at me should have told her I was no pharmacist. The poor girl behind the counter kept trying to tell her I didn't work there, but it just fell on deaf ears. I could tell the actual pharmacist was close to losing it, so I just told her it's okay and I can wait if she wants to get the lady out of the drive-through first. The kicker? After looking up the lady's account, her RX was actually at a different location, same company name. They have a store on every other block, it seems like. She offered to have the RX transferred over instead of having the lady drive to the other location, but at this point, Crazy McCray decided the better option was to threaten to sue the pharmacy, throw what I think was a water bottle at the window and flip the nice pharmacist off. Well, okay then. Not satisfied with her asshole act, she kept pointing at me, screaming at the top of her lungs and threatening to get me fired. Good luck with that, before driving off, wheels screeching. The pharmacist kept apologizing, but I just brushed it off and told her not to worry about it. No harm done. Got my meds, went home and started my antibiotics. That was my morning. Joy. The next one is titled, I forgot to take off my lanyard. Silly me. To start with, I work in manufacturing, assembling medical equipment. Our dress code is casual. Basically, so long as we are covered and wearing socks and deodorant, it's all good. So most of the time I'm in worn jeans, t-shirts and comfortable shoes. I also work in a cleanroom, so no makeup, no jewelry, no perfume or nails done. So I look nothing like a retail grocery store worker. At all. I got off work at 7:15 AM. I work overnights and stopped by the store. Jeans and a faded Captain America t-shirt. I forgot to take off my lanyard, which has my work ID but is not branded with the name of the company I work for, just my picture and name. I'm browsing trying to recall what I needed, a cream, so I head over to the dairy cases when a wild Karen appears and demands to know where some sort of ingredient, spice is. We live in an area that is unfortunately hip deep in entitled Karens and Chads. I have no idea. I tell her that. She insists I must know since I work there and points at my lanyard. Lady Slaveway employees wear name tags, not lanyards. Name tags that clearly have the store name on them. She double downs, insisting she sees me all the time, and since I know the other employees by name, I must also work there. I've worked in retail, so I'm nice to retail workers. I've shopped regularly at this store for more than 10 years, so yes, you might have seen me here before. After attempting to reason with her to no avail, I turned and walked away. She didn't attack me. I have no idea if she complained to anyone. I just bought my cream and went home. I'll be a hell of a lot more careful about taking off my lanyard from now on. Not the most exciting IDWHL story, but annoying nonetheless. God forbid I shop Sony Ferry regularly and be nice to the workers. The next one is titled, Ma'am, I don't get to decide what the uniform looks like. This happened several years ago, when I was 18. I worked in the kitchen at Chain Diner. The uniform is a short-sleeve white Oxford shirt, a black bow tie, and black apron. My dad texted me asking me to stop by the pet store and get some dog food on my way home. No problem. I go inside, in my uniform, name tag, my hair in a very tight bun still in a hairnet. I'm looking at the dog food, trying to find the right brand. A woman comes down the aisle and asks me, where is the organic dog food? I said, I don't know, I'm sorry. She then stares at me for a solid 15 seconds. I can feel it as I'm looking over the dog food. She says, don't you work here? I laughed and said, oh. No, I work at restaurant. I thought it was a funny mishap, no harm no foul. She doesn't laugh though, she just says, you're wearing a name tag. I looked down and unpinned my name tag, showing her the restaurant's logo. Yeah, Iori. Just got off work. She is like, really boiling under the surface. Well, maybe you shouldn't wear such confusing clothes. I didn't know what to say, so I just picked up my dog food and went to the counter. I overheard her complaining to the next cashier about me. The cashier didn't know what to say either. I left before she talked to anyone else. Her seething anger was beyond confusing lol. The next one is titled, Ethical Irony. I found this Reddit via YouTube and have been lurking anonymously for a while now. I understand the rule about no politics, and politics really doesn't play a factor here, except to perhaps shed a bit of light on the swampy nature of the swamp. Sufficient time has passed now, over 30 years, that this tale won't compromise anyone's identity nor touch on any politics of the current day, except, perhaps, to show that the swamp is still the swamp, and that, yes, Virginia, there really is a swamper Klaus. Background: in the mid-1990s, I worked for the U.S. Government Printing Office, now U.S. Government Publishing Office. I began work there as a journeyman printer proofreader. GPO was one of the few agencies that had trade unions, printcraft, bindery, bookbinding, pressmen, etc. It is also one of the few non-appropriated agencies, that is, does not get its budget directly from Congress, but rather from providing printing services for the U.S. government paid from their individual print budgets and providing the public with print and electronic versions of government publications. It was, at the time, the largest printing plant in the world and was the emerging world leader in large-scale electronic publishing technology. At that time, I had already worked in trade there for 8 years but had provisionally transitioned to a white-collar position assigned to the Office of Production Manager while I waited for an opening in their development division, creating and implementing technologies to convert ink on paper archiving to electronic archives and direct-to-press printing, publishing and the newly emerging Internet, a topic for a later post, perhaps because I actually knew what a computer was and how programming was done. The office had a congressional liaison section that catered to the print and publishing needs of Congress. The office not only tracked jobs through the plant, but did troubleshooting and, when needed, direct liaison. Long story short, they needed someone familiar with a certain in-progress job to coordinate with House Printing Services for the production of the House Ethics Manual, HEM. Basically a guide for House members and their staffs on what was and what was not acceptable for them to do in performance of their congressional duties. Volume 1 covered all the laws, statutes, House rules, and Volume 2 was filled with examples of the various aspects spelled out in Volume 1. Because of my unique qualifications, I was asked if I would be willing to liaise with HPS for that, and other, projects up on Capitol Hill. Sure, why not? A change of pace is always welcome in the chaotic world of tight deadlines. Cast of characters: EL, ethically challenged entitled lawyer, Chief of Staff of the House Ethics Committee. HPD, House Printing Director, okay guy but too much under the thumb of the politics of his environment. KF, Columbia Typographic 101 Union Rep, Blue Collar Printer Proofreader and the Union Shop Steward. BR, Big Red, Nom D, Plume of GPO's Night Production Manager. We had butted heads a few times. Hey, he was Irish and no BS, as was I, about a technical, procedural issue here and there, but respected each other as being non-BS people focused on getting the job done on time and in the most efficient manner. Plus, we were both damn good at our jobs. But he was my boss, I knew it, he knew it, and no overall issues, and more than a fair bit of respect for one another. PP, Public Printer, the current administration's politically appointed head of GPO. In other words, a political hack whose daddy owned a publishing business but wouldn't know Helvetica from Garamond or the contents of the US government-style manual even if he read it. Essentially, the production managers actually ran GPO print and publishing operations. Me, US GPO liaison to HPS, journeyman printer proofreader, NAT, not at trade, and known in-house at GPO as Rambo, because someone was in the army once upon a time and has a zero-tolerance BS meter and a shorter fuse when push comes to shove, but always within the letter of the law. But basically, don't BS him or try to intimidate him, you won't like where it goes kind of guy, because he gives exactly zero EFFS about politics and brown noses. Ethics Part 1, Battle of Blunder Hill. The first few months went extremely well. Volume 1 of the HEM was accomplished on time and even under budget, something appreciated by HPD since it made him look good. Several other ongoing projects were similarly accomplished. I got to work in a quiet, fairly posh office on Capitol Hill, albeit buried in the basement bowels of the sprawling maze of tunnels under the Capitol and its House and Senate buildings. During the pre-production phase of HEM, things went along without issue and I had distant interaction with the actual committee staff mainly via marked-up manuscripts and various minor questions on typography and layout. HEM went to production and was printed. Now it was time to begin production of HEM 2. Again, at first things went swimmingly. Various drafts came and went, marked up by yours truly and revised according to the US GPO style manual. A few minor clerical interactions to the staff to explain why so and so was revised to this and so. Typical pre-production, and, again, things were ahead of schedule and under budget. HPD was happier than a clam that missed the chowder bowl. His reputation as an efficient manager was acknowledged on many occasions during that timeframe, and to his credit, he was efficient, just that HPD had a backbone made of overcooked spaghetti. At some point, unknown to me, Eel had interjected herself in the pre-production process. She decided that her JD qualified her as an expert in book design, layout and typography. The page proofs were returned with scrawled notes and a sample that looked like it had been clipped from Cosmopolitan. It should be noted that there are proper annotations used by printers, proofreaders for copy markup, none of which were used. The textual changes I implemented post-haste, but the page proofs were returned in typical GPO style, in layout and typography. Again, the proofs were returned with a note scrawled with red marker across the cover page, use previous style, and a scrawled set of initials. The actual manuscript was pretty clean at this point, so very little was needed to prepare a new set of proofs. I scrawled previous style not GPO compliant on the cover page and sent it off. The next morning went south faster than a goose in winter with its tail on fire. I was sitting at my terminal, sipping my morning coffee and reviewing the day's schedule when I was rudely interrupted. Eel, who the non-professional invective removed, do you think you are? As I feel my house ID torn from the cardigan I had over my shirt and tie, the office was always chilly. Me, I know exactly who I am, as I looked up to appraise a furious-faced shrew who was clutching at my torn-off ID badge and was bending to thrust her face uncomfortably near mine. And you are? The last given in a rather frosty tone, as A, I was not yet done with my morning coffee, priorities, right, B. She was exceedingly hostile and invading what I consider to be my personal space, C, her snatching of the badge had snagged and ruined my rather expensive cardigan, and D, that's not how interactions in HPS or GPO are done. Eel, I am Eel, Chief of Staff of the House Ethics Committee. How dare you? Me, having survived more than one actual combat-related ambush, her demeanor, proximity or words did not fluster me a whole lot. I replied sternly, but still politely. Dare what, miss? Eel, change my manuscript. Normally, any disagreements on almost all matters are passed on through the proper channels. That is, she should have voiced her displeasure to either the office manager of HPS or, given her position, to HPD himself. She had absolutely zero business in this back-office work environment and absolutely zero business conducting herself in violation of HEM me, nonplussed, not GPO style, miss. If you have issue. At this time, having been frantically informed by the office manager, HPD enters in stage left, eyes wide in horror. Eel, now screeching like a puma in heat, I will have you fired. You insert more invective perhaps suited to bar brawls, but certainly not Capitol Hill. HPD, stammering, eyes blinking like a spastic semaphore, wah. What's going on? Eel, I want this insufferable insert more decidedly unprofessional invective fired and escorted from the hill. HPD could only flap his lips and make incoherent gurgles in his throat. Me, reaching under my snagged cardigan and withdrawing my GPO ID on its lanyard, miss, I work for GPO and you can't fire me. I looked at HPD and reached down, turning the power off to the PC. I am terminating my detail to HPS. I'll be off to GPO now. Il, I am not done with you. Me, perhaps not, miss, but I am entirely done with you. I gathered up my coffee mug, ejected the 3.5 floppy, the one with the entire project stored on it, from its drive and slid it into my pocket. Il, I did not give you permission to leave. Me, ma'am, I do not need your permission. I left at a leisurely pace. Unfortunately, I am not good at whistling, else I would have, as I sauntered out and headed back to GPO. Neither HPD nor the stunned Il said anything. Ethics, Part 2, Rise of Rambo. I walked back to GPO from Capitol Hill. It's a bit of a walk, but it was a pleasant spring day and I wanted Il to vent to whoever back at GPO. I didn't exactly relish the prospect, but I was not overly concerned. First, not only was I protected by the rules and regulations of the civil service, but I was also a union member and had all the protections built into the contract between GPO and its various unions. It once took 5 years to fire a typesetter who showed up drunk every night and slept it off under his linotype machine. News can travel fast sometimes in government, particularly from the high and mighty to some political appointee. Bad news travels even faster. So I knew as I trekked back to GPO that some version of what happened would have already been relayed from HPS or House Ethics Committee to GPO. C'est la vie, c'est la guerre. I arrived back at GPO and went to my desk, and sure enough, there was a note telling me to report immediately to the PP's office. There was also a bevy of urgent emails saying pretty much the same thing. First I sauntered over to the proofroom and gathered up KF and clued him into what was going on. He laughed and shook his head and made some remark about Rambo on the Hill. I laughed. Next we went over to production and, somewhat surprised, found BR still there, though his night shift was long over at this point. But good. Me, hey, Red. There's going to be a excrement show in the PP's office. You might want to come. BR, oh. What the F have you done now, Rambo? Yes, he actually used that rather than my name. Reputation is an awesome thing. I explained. Well, F me. You poked the damned bear. Me, with a 2x4. I had to laugh, as did KF, because Red had to suppress a grin and give me his official manager glare of disapproval at the same time. We arrived in short order on the top floor. On the way up, BR had made clear that he would take charge and that I and KF would only add what the situation needed. Both KF and I were fine with that. BR announced that the PP was expecting us to the receptionist. She buzzed her boss and we were admitted without delay. PP, pacing agitatedly behind his desk, I have been on the phone with Il. I will not allow such conduct by anyone in this agency. Do you care to explain yourself? BR, by all accounts, PP, Il stepped out of bounds. He was a looming figure and had his arms folded across his rather substantial chest and had his BR don't F with me scowl etched in his face. PP, ignoring BR and attempting to intimidate me with a hard-eyed glare. Something rather akin to a stuffed panda bear toy that had feasted on lemons. You will write an official apology to Il before close of business and submit it to me for review. Me. KF elbows me and answers, he will not. The union would like to file a formal grievance for an assault by a congressional staff member against a brother of our union. BR, really PO'd because the PP has bypassed his role as my superior. Red was a stickler for chain of command, uses PP's first name in a rather disdainful manner. You need to hear me's account before dictating things like that to my people. Told you, BR is a no-nonsense hard ass and that hardassery extends up and down the chain. I give a concise recount of events. PP, that is not how she and HPD related the events. I am back at GPO now and don't need to use public face niceties. Me, I don't give a rat's behind what the POS Ivy League lawyer said or whatever HPD chimed in with while licking her boots. That is what happened. It's as BR and KF said. They will officially apologize to me in writing and remunerate me the cost of a new cardigan, gesture to my ruined cardigan. If they do not, KF will lodge a formal complaint via the union and I will file a formal complaint through civil service. Is that all? PP, blinking while BR gives me a scowl. You and KF may leave, I will discuss the matter with BR. A week or so later, I did receive an official apology from the Chief of Staff of the House Ethics Committee, and my next paycheck included an incidental expenses amount to cover the cost of the cardigan that had obviously been knitted by alien fairies on Mars, judging by the amount. Word went through the plant. GPO had more than 4,000 employees back then, and the legend of Rambo grew beyond even the bounds of EPD, Electronic Print Division. Note, also HEM 2 was published, on time and on budget, following GPO style. I understand, but cannot confirm, that a memo was circulated to the staffs of the various committees about interactions with other federal agencies, including the GPO. By then I was in the development division and working graveyard shift. BR would shake his head at me from time to time when we passed in the hall. The next one is titled, I Can't Sign For It, I Don't Work Here. This story took place 15 years ago, so please forgive me if I don't remember details, it's been a while. My dad worked in clock repair for many years before retiring here last year. Still sad to see the store close. I'd like to note that occasionally I would be asked to help my dad on certain service calls and in his store. As he got older it became harder and harder to move big grandfather clocks and whatnot. So while I did help when asked, I was not an employee of the company. Hopefully that makes sense. At the time my parents had enrolled me in a summer tutoring program. My grades weren't the best back then, and in reality I needed it, even though I hated it. The tutoring program was in a storefront across the parking lot from my dad's shop in their shopping center. When I would leave the tutoring program I'd go across the parking lot and wait at my dad's shop for either my mum to pick me up or until he closed for the day, whichever was more convenient for my parents. On the day of this story I was waiting to be picked up. Anyways, on to the story. Me D, Dad F, FedEx driver. So as I said, I headed over to my dad's shop to be picked up. Usually I'd come in and let my dad know I was there, text my mum saying I was out and wait at the front desk. The story was fairly quiet, unless you count the ticking from all the clocks in the back, and I just sat at the desk with a notepad drawing. The phone rang and my dad answered in his normal cheery tone. I could tell it was a new customer he was talking to since he had to explain quite a bit. Shortly after he answered the phone I hear the front doorbell ding and saw a FedEx delivery driver walk in with a large package. Yes, I have a delivery for clock shop name M. Sure, no problem. I don't work here, but my dad will be up in a sec. He's just on the phone. I sat there for a minute or two. My dad was still on the phone and walked up to grab his logbook to make a service call ticket. He then gestured to the driver that he'd be just a minute. Look, I really don't have time, could you sign for it? I'm sorry, like I said, I don't work here so I can't. Really? I just need a signature that someone received it. Again I can't. He's almost done, just give him a minute. I can't wait any longer. Tell him if he wants the package he needs to pick it up from the depot. The driver then picks up the package and walks out. Just as he does my dad walks out to talk to him. D, where did he go? He left because he didn't want to wait for you to get off the phone to sign for the package. D, what the hell? He saw me on the phone, he couldn't have waited 2 minutes. My dad grumbled, clearly frustrated for a minute, and pulled out the phone book from under the front desk. He called the number for FedEx and told them what had happened. He explained to the operator the package was for very important parts that he was expecting for a clock he was servicing, and that the driver's impatience was just rude and unprofessional. I ended up getting picked up while he was on the phone, so I didn't hear exactly what happened. Later that night, during dinner, I asked if the guy came back. Turns out the operator sent him back to deliver the package. My dad said the guy tried to be tough and say that I wouldn't sign for it. I then just looked at him and said, first off, he doesn't work here and he's 14. Were you going to accept anyone's signature and just dump it here? Secondly, you saw me on the phone and I even told you I'd be just a minute. He said the guy backed off hard, accepted the signature and left. End of the day, it worked out. Just have a little patience, guys. Sometimes it's all it takes. The next one is titled, Grocery Store Story. I'm not sure if this story should go here or not. I've been listening to a lot of these stories on YouTube, and I figured I'd post it and see what kind of response I got. When I was younger, there were 2 grocery stores in my area, the one that my family shopped at, who asked if I had a younger brother they could hire when I applied to work there, and the other one. I got hired at the other one, but as I didn't shop there regularly I didn't know where anything was. Fortunately, my job was just to put groceries into bags for customers, so that didn't cause too many problems, until one night, after I'd been working there for about 2 weeks. Customer comes through the line, close to closing time. Yes, this store actually wasn't open 24 hours a day, but closed and locked the doors at 9 p.m. They had a package of steaks, with no price sticker on them. The cashier asks the customer if there was a price per pound sign near where they found the steaks, and the customer said they didn't know. The cashier then turns to me and tells me to run back to the meat department, and find out how much the steaks are per pound. Now, the meat department, I could find, because that was at the back of the store where all the coolers and such were, as well as all the butchering equipment, because occasionally hunters would bring in deer, and the store would, for a small fee, cut up the deer for the hunters who didn't do it themselves. Meat in general, I found no problem. Steaks? No idea. So I look around, and I see a tall man in a white jacket that is covered in blood. The same thing the butchers wear. So I ask him if he knows where the steaks are. He turns and looks at me, and says, "I don't work here," in this raspy voice. I turn around, go back to the front of the store, and tell them the steaks are $3.50 a pound. Apparently this was an acceptable price, because neither the customer or the cashier complained about it. Funny thing was, I looked for the guy to walk out the doors, which were right next to the registers, for the rest of the night, and never saw him leave.